Welcome to Classroom 5.0, a podcast that uncovers industry insights, cutting-edge research and practical evidence-based strategies that help us all to imagine and design learning environments and pathways for this ever-evolving world so that together we can best support the next gen to uncover and deliver their unique potential. This episode has been recorded from our hometown of Port Macquarie, which we're grateful to share and enjoy alongside the traditional owners of Beer Pie Country, whose ongoing cultures and connections to lands and waters we celebrate, and whose elders, past, present and emerging, we pay our respect to. I'm Ariane Power, co-founder of the Posify Group and your host for today's episode, and I cannot wait to be introducing you to someone I get to call my good friend, Matt Purcell, or as I like to call him, Matty P. But let's just go in with a little bit of introduction of who Matt is. So Matt's life goal has been to give back and to help young people who might feel as though they don't fit in to understand themselves and overcome the negative barriers, emotions, and mindsets that would otherwise hold them back. He's an in-demand speaker who is often invited to deliver keynote presentations at conferences or seminars across the country, an accomplished solo musician, having sold more than 50,000 tracks online and having played along some of Australia's greatest and most successful artists, including Jimmy Barnes, Renee Geyer, Stan Walker, and Evermore. And he's the author of Life Hacks for Meaningful Living. It's no surprise people refer to him as one of Australia's leading entrepreneurs. Matt helps others to amplify their messages for good as the co-founder of Mentored Media and has founded Social Kung Fu, a social and emotional development program for the next gen. Despite having a lot to share about himself, Matt is very quick to spin the microphone onto others, and he does that with his podcast, which he hosts, called The Examine Life, regularly featured #1 on the iTunes charts in Australia, with guests including Mark Burris, Janine Alice, Osher Gunsberg, and more. And today it is such a pleasure to be spinning that microphone right on back onto you, Mr. Matt, having you take the stage for your story. Welcome, my friend.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks so much. It's weird. It was so official, that stuff. Like, I hear all that and just feel tired. I'm like, what?
I don't blame you for feeling tired. I mean, you are a little bit of a young spring chicken, far younger than myself, and that is a lot to have accomplished in your life, and we're going to dive into all that kind of stuff. I mean, humans like you, I like to refer to them as multi-potentialites. You definitely inspire me to jump out of bed. And I'm wondering, because, you know, it does sound official, and there are unofficial parts of your story that are less, I guess, professional that I didn't share in that bio. And I wondered if that would be okay to start there. Let us all know what does inspire you to do all of these wild and wonderful things, make change.
Yeah, I guess the people I generally find don't relate to success as much as, I mean, you see a lot with the celebrity culture and influencer culture online or out. And it's like, oh, that's cool as an aspirational aspect, but some people might think you just land there, you know, you just inherit it, or you're just lucky. And I think there's a bit of luck in it, but there's a lot of, for me, it was just discovering, touching and seeing, tasting and seeing what was good. I was always a doer, meaning like I wouldn't have to think or procrastinate. I don't procrastinate a lot. Like that's a pretty cool thing, but I've had to learn not to dive headfirst into things that snap my neck with my time. Yeah.
I like that one. I might pinch it.
Yeah. So I've had to learn to think more than I always have. I had a quote that I've thrown around a lot. It's like, I trying to help doers think and thinkers do. I think I'm a natural doer. So what I do is I'll be like, oh, that looks interesting. I might be good at that. Let's just go for it and learn and test it and fail quick. And, you know, without really knowing the risks and the time commitments. And some people might be thinkers and they're not doers. So they're like, oh, I know the plan, I have a strategy, I have the list, I have the checklist, but I haven't made one step at all on that stuff.
Yeah. And where do you find the magic mix of those two things? Have you figured it out yet, or is that the wild ride of life for you?
I think I'm still a doer first, but I have a few tricks I've learned to be able to question. I mean, I think time is the thing that's really helped me think more and just stop before I do now. Because I think the great equalizer is time. So, I mean, we all know that. We all have 24-hour currency between you, me, Oprah Winfrey, whoever we talk about. And it's really how you use that. And we talk about in terms of money, and we invest money to be able to get good equity, but I think there's a kind of a self-love equity we can forget about. Well, you might be able to do a lot of things like I can, but I can't do everything. I've got family, I've got my health, I've got responsibilities. So it really comes down to values then. It's like, what do I place as the most important things in my life, and what things will just have to fall away? Then I can't touch them. And that's my boundaries at the moment.
Is figuring out what those values are. And I'm also hearing you refer to recognizing is your strengths and finding other people in your community or in your network to play to the other parts of your strengths. I think you do a beautiful job of that. And look, I'm a little bit cheeky because I do know some of your backstory, but I'm conscious that many of the listeners joining us today won't know a little bit about Matt. And you talk about family, and I'm curious, if you feel comfortable, would you mind sharing with us a little bit about your childhood growing up and how it shaped your values today?
Yeah, sure. My mum and dad looked like they kidnapped me. They were both white. So if you're listening to this as an audio version, you wouldn't be able to tell that I'm Korean. Yeah, very, very much Korean, full Korean. So when I was young, walking down the street in Newcastle, in Sydney, in New South Wales, Australia, whoever's listening to this around the world, maybe it's daunting to see me holding hands with these two white people back in a time where it wasn't super common to see that in the street.
Yeah.
That didn't really bother me, but because our family was great. I think the big turning point was when they separated when I was 6, and my sister's from Taiwan, so she was adopted too. So they adopted me and my sister, and I mean, to be honest, I didn't know who I was or what I was. I felt pretty bad about life for, I think, into my early teenage years. I was reaching for identity and approval and drawn to, I guess status or confirmation from other people, because I just had a big gap in that life. And it wasn't until I found music and creative arts that really helped me express what was going on. And that really was a lifesaver for me. And my mum putting me in touch with some good mentors in the community, which gave me better models to show that there's another lifestyle that's possible, not just the drop kicks I was hanging with at school, because I mean that's all I really wanted to be like. But then put in the proximity of other cool older people, that really changed the game.
Wow, there's so much in that I want to unpack. I mean, part of it, I heard you talk to role models, and let's circle back to that, because I want to come back to this piece of self-identity. And you've obviously done the work, right? In terms of understanding where you've come from, where you're headed. You mentioned some interests being music and being able to express yourself. But for some of our listeners who might be raising young people and thinking, well, how can I help my young person who's really out of touch with their own identity or has some growth to do there? What do you think some of the initial stages are that really stood out for you and made a difference, and that you're seeing work for young people as well?
I think some of the stages are when you start getting older, the parent's voice isn't the only voice of authority anymore. It's not the only voice that you need to hear "I love you" from. You care less about that as being the only source, and care about having a more balanced view. Like it starts with like all these absolutes, these universal things, like very generalized things, like everyone hates me or everyone likes me or no one likes me. It's these very big, grand, unspecific words that we use, young people use. But what they really, I mean, it's a really big part of development as a young person, is it? When you realize if you come from a loving family and you be told you do mostly good things, and you go to school or online as well, and you get pointed out that you're not as smart as them, or you're not as pretty as them, and it's these very unhealthy, unfair comparisons. So I think young people are craving a sense of self-worth in what they do, and they confuse that with like achievement, just being achievement driven or appearance driven. But I think some of the things that I've helped young people with over the years is peeling underneath the surface and going, okay, what if you couldn't be smart and go to what if you're an athlete, what if you couldn't run again? What would you be then? Or start peeling back the things they feel like they need, if even they had it. I mean, what are you then? I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, and really the value piece is here, like you are valuable regardless of what you do. because see, this clothing here is brainless and worthless without my attention and my approval. I Everything I touch, everything I tend to online, everything that I give attention to means that I'm giving value to it, which means I'm valuable. So it's trying to find a message that is universal, and I think that's the universal core, is that everyone has value because you give value to dead things. Like this laptop I'm speaking on is dead and worthless without my attention, without me giving it use. So, but most of the time, young people think they're the mannequin, and the shirts gives them value. But it's the other way around. It's like, I give this shirt value. Vogue wouldn't exist unless everyone bought it. So Vogue needs you, right? So, but we think we're the mannequin. So everything we need, all this stuff to be valuable. It's reverse, and it's trying to come up with tactics to be able to be relevant with young people, to explain it in a way like that. That's how I think.
I love that. I mean, there was a lot of talk in entrepreneur world about the simplicity of time, if you like, and taking away some of the daily decisions that we need to make. I mean, Steve Jobs was famous, wasn't he, for just choosing the outfit that he wore because it took less cognitive loading. But he also made wearing the same outfit real cool in entrepreneurial land. And who would have thought? And it's because, to your point, he brought the value to the conversation. So he was Steve Jobs. Everybody could see that value, and therefore the same outfit had the same thing. And wow, you've really got my brain spinning on all the different ways that we could start to help young people reverse engineer that value metric. I like that. Where have you seen that work the best, do you think? Have you seen it in action?
Yeah, I have. I've done this. I've done exercises in workshops and seminars and one-on-one. So for years, and it's always. I like to confront people. Like, I like to confront young people. I think in a way which is a little intense. Like, there's a strange harshness to my message in my tone, but it comes from a place of love. It's like, really, I think how I've seen it work is when I see somebody, there's a spectrum I see of either they're tough or they're tender. Like, a lot of people have their guard up. So there's an approach there I have where if they're more tough, you need to crack it a little bit harder. I need to be a little more intense in my approach. But if they're a bit tender, and if you go hard at them, you're like, you call them out on things, and their belief systems might just crumble because they're already so tender. So it's like, asking questions to me is the key. It's getting in the right environment, building some trust, but those questions are really key so they can think for themselves, and they start seeing things. You put things in front of them. So what if this was taken away? Is it really true, this? Can you give some proof about that? Really, everybody hates you? Then they will either, well, oh wow, that's bad, or that you're right, and it plants a seed. And then I like being one-on-one with youth for years and seeing them every week, because I'd see it just kind of chip away at their mind every week and see a transformation. Like, you're right, they're not good for me, and they arrive at that conclusion themselves. So we've got to be patient. Sometimes it's an instant moment of like, wow, this is a life-changing moment. I love them, but sometimes it's a long game.
Oh, that is so true. And I love that you've given us all a little bit of a framework. And I just want to check in that I've got it right from your perspective. It's checking in with a young person and asking questions. So that sense of curiosity to see where they're at, what their perspective is, to your point of where are their levels of vulnerability. And from that point, making a bit of a decision to play around with how much you can challenge and test some boundaries and present some new perspectives. Is that right?
That's right. And I guess one layer that's missing that's very important is you've got to be willing to be vulnerable about your own stuff.
Yeah.
Why do we go see? It's an absolute miracle in my view that we go to the movies and sit there for 2 hours undistracted. Like, we are so distracted. Like, at any time in your day, you could be distracted from past, present, future events and be totally not here. But there's something in the sense of narratives in stories that have the hero, the problem, the villains, all that stuff that really shows you what a character is or value is. Because everything's very abstract when you come in the terms of morality, what's right, what's wrong, how to live your life. So you should look. I ask every mentor who wants to be a mentor or like a parent, draw out on a piece of paper or on an iPad a timeline from your childhood of that period of your time of where your kid's at, and ring your mum up, ring your friends up during that time, and ask them what dumb things did I do. I've done this. What good things did I do? What was I like? I've rang my mum so many times preparing for seminars and talks to be like, ask her like, what was I? Was I insecure? When was in my timeline I was the most insecure? What was I most insecure about in your view? And that triggers my mind and in stories, so then I can actually share those stories generously with my kids or young people. But when I was this time, I did something really dumb. And that way, by you sharing that story, it's not just you relating to them, it's you actually saying, there's so many things in that. There's so many things that, like a movie, you are the character in that story and you're showing a character flaw, or you're showing a development, or you're showing a common problem that they may be going through. They can insert themselves in the problem. That's why we love movies, is although it never happened in history, these made up stories, you see yourself, you relate to the hero or you relate to the villain, or whatever the event was, because we've got that bias toward wanting what's in it for me. So do the work. If you want to connect, go back, be his good historian of what your story is, and they're really valuable tools.
Oh, they're such fantastic tips, Matt. And it does make me think about the science of meaning, which we draw on for the Academy, and looking at that part of storytelling, so the narrative. So we know from a coherence perspective in people's minds, it's really important for them to be able to make, young people, old people, all people, for us to be able to make sense of the things that happen to us and the way that we see ourselves and how that then maps to others. And coming back to that modeling piece, what I'm hearing is that in disclosing a little piece of ourselves as adults to a young person, not to give them advice, but just to offer up, hey, this kind of reminds me of this thing that happened, and here's what I learned off the back of it. I'm imagining that really helps a young person to place themselves in a fuzzy vision of where they might be up the track, so that they can reverse engineer and design their way forward. Is that kind of what you experience happens in your coaching sessions in between, or is it something else?
I think stories sell, facts tell, stories sell. That's what I say in marketing, but it works with young people. If you got to give examples and create a picture of what results that could be ahead of them, or in negative and positive. Because if you just tell, it's once again, it's cinema. Imagine the cinema manager gets up and goes, okay, everybody, instead of watching, this film which goes for 180 minutes, I'm just going to save you heaps of time. Frodo's the hero, Sauron's the bad guy. He has to go through this journey, take the ring to Mordor. He gets there eventually, goes through all these challenges. He wins the day, the end. That's the facts, right? The dot points of the thing. I was like, oh, well, that's very uninspiring, but that's not a lie. It's true. So I think when you want to inspire or show or warn people, if it's not from your own experiences, borrow from the millions or hundreds of stories of other people's mistakes. That's the greatest people, the greatest shortcut to hacking to avoiding problems or to finding solutions to problems. You don't have to reinvent the ladder. Like, the ladder's already been climbed for so many things. You just got to know that's where you're going to go. You don't have to be an imposter, feel like an imposter. I haven't lived that. It's like, well, no, a good leader, a good mentor would find role models, and of good and bad role models, to say this is what is possible. I'm warning you now. I've seen it before.
Which brings me, it's a nice segue into my next question about curation. I had a really interesting conversation with Jan Owen. It's a couple of episodes back. For those who are listening, you can go check it out. But we were talking about social media and the responsibility, if any, that we as adults have to help our young people learn how to curate their feeds and curate our own feeds in a way that's seeking out, to your point, stories that are helpful, as opposed to ones that we might not be able to necessarily switch some of those more automatic and negative thoughts around. And I know there's a lot of conversation at the moment. We all do about, the ins and outs and the bads and the cons, if you like, of social media, the dangers. And so I can't help, given that you are in the media industry yourself, but ask your perspective on all of this. Where are you sitting with social media for young people, and what is our responsibility, if any?
Yeah, there's no well-trodden path for how to use social media. So people just when you're dropped into a very saturated crowd, you just look around and go, okay, everyone's wearing that, everyone's doing that, so that's what's acceptable. So that's how you learn. That's how we, without much thought, that's what people do. A lot of young people just look at their friends. So there's no model and there are risks. I mean, people go into schools and share, oh, here are the risks of cyber this or sharing this or being exposed to here and these catfishing and all the types of crap things that people can do to young people and people in general, trick people. But I think some questions is this. One question is this I ask everyone is like, what's the benefit of you posting that? It's like, oh, what's the benefit of posting photos of your kids? What do you get from that? Is it a social benefit? Is it a commercial benefit? So what's the benefit you get? And people I don't know what benefit. I just do it because I like it, and I guess I want people to see me. Oh, you want people to see you that way? Okay, that's cool. Like, that's nothing wrong with that. But let me just make sure that's clear. That's what you've chosen to do. So what I'm doing, I'm using questions again. It's intention. So what do you want to get out of social media? So you want to be liked? Do you want to be, like, do you want to date somebody? Do you want a boyfriend? Do you want a girlfriend? Do you want a better friend? Like, let's get really clear on what you want with social media and then use it to be able to get a positive outcome rather than just having to feel like you're keeping up with the Joneses, which is so exhausting. For no reason, just to keep up appearances without a clear intention is a good recipe for wasting your life.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. And I have to be really honest and disclose, when you were asking that question, there was a pause and I was thinking to myself, let me think about this. When did I last pick photos of the kids and what was the reason? And without that kind of roadmap of, well, what's an acceptable answer? Even I found myself wondering, well, I don't know if I answer it this way. The bit that you added next, Matt, and the bit that I hope everybody takes away from this conversation is that non-judgmental response. Because I think what I'm taking away from what you're saying is that whatever your motivation behind doing it, cool, be cool with that. And if you're not cool with that, then it's time to question it. But being really conscious about our posting and about our intent and our motivation on the platform is sounding like the recipe. But what about that on the flip side? So that's about the posting. And I'm curious about, that passive receipt and your thoughts on what that's about at the moment, how we can look to curate that in a more conscious way.
You mean not being negatively affected by what you see online, or what do you mean by?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the first thing that came to mind, but also, to your point of if you're gathering stories, in what way can we curate our feeds or be more mindful about what the diet is of social media that we're taking in and help our young people to start to look at that as well so that it's more beneficial for them or more conscious for them. Let's ditch the judgment, more conscious.
Yeah. I mean, so I think another question is, why do we spend so much time on social media? So social media, it's funny how they call it a feed, because a feed is literally what pigs eat out
of. It's a diet, right? Like,
so we need to be informed, entertained, and educated.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful things, but all within reason and all within its own moderation. So I think if you look at the iPhone particularly has a function which tells you how much time you spend on apps. Like, so would you, out of the 24 hours of the currency we've got, are you happy with being informed from that? And that means you're not really in touch with physical five senses with people. So I think be really attuned with how this is making you think and feel. I know a lot of people get very overwhelmed and feel very judgmental of themselves and feel very envious and jealous of people. When you find that's really about mindfulness and being aware of how is my attention being captured by other people, or am I intentionally putting my attention on this to learn? I think that's the two angles here. I can't remember the psychological term for the two, but I recently was speaking at a webinar with this amazing mindfulness coach, and he was saying there's two types of attention: captured attention and controlled attention. And the controlled attention is what we're doing right now. We're very acutely, intentionally listening to each other. But captured is my phone's buzzing and I pull away from that, and I'm stuck on there, and I'm getting anxious, and I don't know what. So it's being conscious of that and putting boundaries around it, because I don't think a lot of young people have. That's maybe an exception. They know theoretically, oh yeah, too much of anything's bad, but there's always an exception. Like, oh, this is too much fun. This is the source of everything. But I like to be able to unplug to. I think I like challenging young people the moment I meet. It's like, well, it's one thing is never going to completely create health for you. Like even water, you got to eat eventually. Even with eating, you've got to have water. Like there's not just one source of that hits everything. No magic pill. So you're gonna have some really negative results if you just think that that's gonna be good, and you got to be conscious of that. That's why you burn out. Let's look at the symptoms. That's why you burn out. That's why you're a bit wired and tired, and that's why you feel like you need to buy more things with money you don't have, to impress people you don't know. That's why. Where do these desires or these pressures come from? It's what you put in your head, and what do you put in your head? Where do you find that? What are you looking at?
Yeah, and the thing that's kind of sticking out to me and all of that as well is it's just this question of, who's running the show? Who's in charge? Who's asking you to jump online right now? What part of you is needing to go through this or go through that? What part of you wants to be doing something else? So yeah, I like that idea of being in control. That's really cool, Matt. I like that. And I wonder how you can share a little bit about Social Kung Fu, because I know this is a really important project that, having known you for some time, seems to have built over the years as you've watched and observed some of the challenges our young people face and some of the strengths that sit within them that they perhaps aren't even aware about. I love the fact that you're accelerating social and emotional development with them, but I could go on, so I'm going to let you do that instead. Tell us a little bit about the program and how it relates to all of this that we've been talking about.
Yeah, about 6 years ago, I started this idea. I started as a workshop, and it came about with coming across a lot of young people getting bullied, and I quickly figured out that it wasn't physical. It wasn't like started by being punching or kicking it. It was actually words, and it dawned on me. I was like, we have so many shows and so much culture focused on physical self-defense codes like boxing and Krav Maga, UFC. But if words are the most common form of abuse in the world, which research has shown that, then what's the equivalent to a verbal block, a verbal punch, a grapple? And there's not a day that goes by where we're not in some type of verbal conflict or miscommunication. But there's no formal training in school that teaches you how to deal with verbal conflict. So, and that's the number one form of abuse in the world, not physical.
Yeah, wow.
So, I mean, what's equivalent to that? The verbal dojo, and scripts. In boxing, there's combinations, jab, cross, hooks, and uppercuts.
Yes, I love that.
And there's too much correlation between that and words too.
Yeah. Yeah, and that one leads to the other, which leads to the other.
Yeah, it compounds. So Social Kung Fu is the aim of it. It started as a workshop. It started from one-on-ones. It started from being in touch with, well, this is a big problem and a big gap in people's skill set. Even adults and parents have asked me about these things. I had a parent ask me, I'm a stepmom, and the two kids that that are my stepchildren that I married, my husband and they're my kids now, they say things like, you're not my mum, all these hurtful things. And she's like, what do I say, Matt? And Social Kung Fu actually helped her to be able to deflect those hurtful words and those clarifying statements back to her kids. And we're like, does it matter if I'm your mum? Does that mean that you can treat me poorly? Oh, how do you think that? Are you trying to make me feel bad? So it's there. That's verbal. That's Social Kung Fu. That's an example of how you can use your words to be able to take an attack and not get offended or triggered, and be able to do something with it and reverse the energy back. Your clarifying questions and Socratic method and so many things. So Social Kung Fu, we've done, like, there's so many modules. We're launching it next year. We're aiming for year 9, 10, and 11. And there's scripts that people use. There's exercises for teachers to facilitate with slides, and I'll be presenting so that they don't have to depend on an ex-age teacher to be cool, in my coolness. And
You've literally just relieved every single teacher's fear right now, and hearing you say that.
yeah, I've already made the teacher Zoom presentation type things with exercises to facilitate, a 40-minute class, and it's all backed by research. Like, I've had psych students and psychologists backed by Dr. Susie Green. She's looked over it, so it's all grounded I'm very proud of it because I've done it right with research. But there's pages of reference notes, and I'm like, this is great because I did crap at school. I look so smart.
Matt, I love that you've done the doing and you've known in your gut that this stuff works and that you've turned to the science to help with the thinking, so that those of us who need some more science and black and white facts so that we don't do harm are reassured. And it's just such an exciting program to be hitting schools. I can't wait. And for anybody listening, I have had the pleasure of working alongside Matt on stage, and he is literally Magic Matt. So you need to get him amongst your students, because if there's any doubt in a student's mind, then they just need to meet Matt and they'll be like, right, I'm on to this. Absolutely. And I think you make a point that it's not just the kids that need some support in this. I mean, I'm speaking to adults as well. I hear a lot. One of the first things I'm asked for is some support around assertive communication, learning how to speak up and state our boundaries in a really compassionate way as we're practicing being kind, not only to others, but to ourselves. And these are lessons that aren't taught in school. To have scripts, I think, is going to be really, really special and amazing.
Scripts and boundary. Like, one thing I'll share is that helps everybody is one of our modules is on personal boundaries. And it's one of the things where people really struggle to say yes less to things, or they struggle to say yes to the things they want to do, or they take a bit assertiveness, like you're saying, like, how do I stop saying yes to all these work commitments or to my mates, and how do I let them down easy? And it's just full of great analogies and steps to be able to take it. So one analogy I use is that everyone has a set of house rules. It's like, you might have rules of this is where you put your shoes, and you knock on the door before you enter the room, etc. And this is where you put your plates. And we communicate those rules, and there's consequences for those rules. But if you don't make those rules known to people, then no one will be able to abide by them, and you'll get frustrated because you're living as if people are mind readers and there's no order. So people just hoard your house. It'd be like someone knocking on your door going, "Hey, Marianne, I don't know you, but can I come in?" And you're like, why? Who are you? Are you rude for saying why? Who are you? No, because this is your house. It's got lots of valuable things. This is where you live. It's what you own. And so they've got to show respect to you. They're going to have an intention, a purpose to come into your house. But sometimes we treat our house with more personal, but we've got more boundaries around our house and our possessions than we do our personal life. If our life is like a living house, people often just equivalently just knock on the door and be like, "Hey, can you do this for me? You don't know me. I've never earned the trust," but you're like, "Oh yeah, sure, whatever." Like,
or to the flip side, burst on through that door in a way that almost kind of blows your mind, or takes a bit of a shock. It's like, well, if you've just come on in, then I guess we're time to party. I really like that analogy, Matt. It's so true. And I know you're working with some of the older kids, but we're even seeing, and I'll put a link to the show notes actually, it's a pack that we developed for teachers called Healthy Boundaries. And it's helping younger kids to really get in tune with some of those, what we call as adults, gut feelings or intuitions. So, when you get that sense of, oh, something doesn't quite feel right now, where does that show up in your body physically? And so then how can you connect those physical sensations that are there to protect you and to keep you safe, to recognize what feelings are coming up and then what thoughts are coming up, and then to your point, what you can do with that combination of things. I think it's a really important move. And if we're talking about the future of learning and what our classroom might look like as we evolve, it's going to be a skill that I hope will be seen for the next gen that potentially many of us listening didn't quite get. But speaking of the future of learning, I do not want to gloss over your earlier career, and I know you still do a lot of this as well, but your music. Tell us a little bit about music, entrepreneurship, media, all of this amazing youth work. How does all of this come together for maybe a parent who's worried about a child who's got an after-school journey yet ahead of them, or even a young person listening today?
That's a good question. I think I dived into creativity through music when I was like 12 or 13. And really fancied it, got really good at it because I spent a lot of time. I personally just got a lot of enjoyment. Just not even, it was the first thing I found that it didn't matter if I was on stage or just by myself in my bedroom. That's how you really can tell, in my view, if something is really a passion for you. Is it's just for an audience of you. Just an audience of one. If you get so famous and you can't get back in your bedroom and just get back to when it first started, then it's not real. I think you've lost it. I think
Yeah.
you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Then you've got to give it. All the guys I've met a lot of them that are guys and girls who are successful and are really in it for the right reasons. They just do it still for free, in some form. So for me, I started with music, and naturally, I was just like, "Oh, how good can I get at music?" And naturally, you want to go even as a year 10 student, go, "Oh, what are the career paths for this thing?" In
Yeah.
original music and original art, if it's just visual arts or filmmaking, is such a hard industry to have security in. But there are tiers of professionalisms under creative arts, which I found quickly. I was like, well, you could be a music teacher, you can be a lecturer, you can be a producer, you can be a commercial performer playing at weddings, functions, and all, and that's respectable. There's actually a business in that. So I was advised by my mum and my dad, particularly, to like treat this as a business. Like, if you're going to be an artist, you have to not just think you're an artist. There's a business of being an artist rather than just writing the song.
Great messaging from mum and dad. Nice work.
It's
Yeah.
probably there is a clear line between the middle of being the artist and being the business guy.
Yes.
And that's why a lot of artists just focus on the art, and you hear really horrific stories of managers taking advantage of the artist in time because they're just focusing on their craft. But I did experience both, where I tried to do both, and it was very hard to do it. And I toured well. I toured like from late teenagers to early 20s. I toured, and in between touring, I started teaching music, and to keep me afloat. And that music tutoring little like service grew so big. Like, well, what do I do with this? Because it's a waste to just throw it away. But I want to go touring, but I realized that touring wasn't for me because I was away from my loved ones. So that's where my values kicked in. I started realizing I can't do everything. There's things I miss. There's things that I'm yearning to do, and I just don't have time to do it. And it's all because of this. So I realized from a young age, like 20 or 21, I'm like, I reckon I should just focus on something else. But I learned so much. Like, here's the thing about transferable skills is
Yes. I was waiting for you to say that.
some people think that you learn one skill and you fix, that's it. And you can only apply those tactics and principles to that industry or that particular activity. Wrong. That's not how you should be thinking about it. You should be thinking about the principles of the process. It applies to other things. So marketing in music, the same approach. It's about getting to the right people and having the right information to be able to state what value you are to that person to be put there. It's no different to being in corporate. It's no different to being anywhere else. If you want to pitch something, I learned how to pitch because I was like, if I want to play at this venue, I realized just calling the bar at the venue, they're not the right person because like, oh, they'll call you back. They won't call you back. So I need to know the name. And when I got to that name, what do I do with that person when I've got their time? They're busy. So I learned all that being a musician.
So true.
But that's transferred all the way to being in marketing now. I had to learn a market. I had to learn how to get over the difference between self-promotion and selfish promotion. Selfish promotion is just being that person who's just boasting all the time. Like, I have this much money, I have this car, I have big abs or whatever. It's like, what's the benefit of that? Like, I think boasting is a big insecurity, like for a lot of people. Like, who gives a crap about that? But self-promotion, done well, is you are about a mission. You got a mission, and it's like it's a real value add to people here. Listen, like, you got a story to share, you got good results that people are having around you, and that's all good. That needs to be promoted. So you've got to put yourself out there as an artist. You've got to learn how to get to the right people as an artist. You got to know maybe the next step or two, not the next 10 steps, the next step or two is where you are, of what potential that is financially and also skill-wise. And look at your time. Is that worth it? And I realized that it wasn't worth it. I actually really liked helping young people because I was exposed to a lot of young people during the tutoring. So it wasn't a script that I followed. It was like realizing it, like just taking, I guess, it's like dating in a way, but professionally, just trying these little things and sticking to it for a period of time. You're like, oh, I really like this. I didn't realize that it was in me. And then following that. And then, yeah, so I will say there was a bit of, you got to be responsible for when you get older. It's like, what's going to be a long-term plan rather than just little short spurts. But I realized, okay, I love young people. I'm going to start a school and use all the students that I build up to start a school. Started a school. I sold the school, by the way, this year.
I know. Congratulations. It was a little bit of a bittersweet moment. Hey, that school has been a big part of your journey.
So that's where I had to learn all these new skills on the fly, because out of all this, I didn't go to business school. Out of all this, I didn't go to even music school.
Well, you kind of did, Matt. You did, because you lived.
Yeah.
And you could argue with a curious mind that living is probably the best business school that you could ever attend.
I agree, but I have people who have uni degrees who work with me or for me, and they're like, "How this is you're proving that this is all a joke to me?" And I'm like, "No, that I'm not the blueprint for everybody." Okay, that's the thing about the sciences and education. I really respect is there's one thing to be able to go, "Oh yeah, this is what worked for me. Copy me." Like, no, that might work for certain people like you, but it's not. That's not how it works. I think it's not the best. You can't replicate to get the same results from that. I think from me, you could learn is that if you're a natural doer, you just have to taste and see a whole bunch of stuff, but have an intention of how my entrepreneurial brain works is that how can this grow? How can this scale? Where do I fit in the picture if success was guaranteed? And is this something I want to do? Like, I work a third of my life, most people work a third of their life. So is this worth it for you? Do you like people? Do you not like people? Do you like working by yourself? Do you like working on a computer, like outdoors? Like, if you go and taste and see in your early 20s.
Yeah, it's a taste and see bit that's exciting, I think, for young people. Can we come back to that bit, though? I heard you say, I'm going to do this for a third of my life. Is this what I want to do? So that's a question that we've been playing around with, especially with young people, as opposed to what do I want to do, which seems very fixed. And I wonder what happens when you spin that for yourself and ask, what impact do I want to have, or who do I want to have served, or what change do I want to have created? And in what way do you center yourself in all the exploration? I know that you've come back to youth, but what has been that common point, if any, that's helped you make your next best step and transfer your skills from one adventure to the next?
People find security in different things. Like some people are like, I find security in having a set wage. That's it. That's my security. Yeah. I don't care if I'm doing something I really like. So they just want consistency, they want certainty. For me, I've rarely found one thing that provides me all the satisfaction of a life like lived, a well life lived, meaning impact, because I'm making an impact in everything I do in some degree, like helping businesses grow, and that's helping families there and their employees grow. But there's a professional and personal. If you can marry the two, it's cool. But I found that's why I naturally want to start other businesses, because I'm committed to those things, but my time's spread because they all focus on different impacts. So youth will focus, social kung fu will impact young people and families. Mentor media will impact brands and businesses and innovative ideas. Other businesses will impact employee satisfaction. So that's kind of my three. Like that's really perfect for me. Like I really love those things.
Amazing.
I love the professionals. I love the young adults, and yeah, that's fun for me. I do it for free. Like it's good. Lights me up to know that I can solve a lot of people's headaches.
Sounds to me like helping other people reach their success is at the center of all that you've moved and gravitated towards. But I might be completely off track there.
No, I think so. I think it's that. And for me, reaching my potential is a big part of it. If I can reach my potential, I think I can help heaps of people reach theirs. It'd be very dissatisfying if I never reached my potential. For me personally, being a bit selfish, and I felt other people do it for them. Like it's like I don't find any. I don't know if it's cool to. I don't know, like it's an interesting one actually. In saying that, I feel like there's potential in me that's almost. I see there's a greater potential for me in what I'm doing ahead, and as I progress, I have more to give back. I think power just magnifies already what you are. So if I give you $1 million, you have $1 million to be more selfish with, or $1 million more to be generous with. And I feel, for me, because of my adoption and where I've come from and how I think, I like to naturally share my wins with people, my findings. I'm a natural creature of things I learn.
It's beautiful, Matt. And I know that you're also a dad. And as we start to wrap up, I have to ask, your little girls are moving into their own learning experience. And I'm wondering if you could wave a magic wand and shape that in some way, what would be involved in their learning as they grow older?
Yeah.
And today, even.
They're both beautiful little girls, and they're so different. They're so different. It's crazy. The cliches are all right with so many ways. Like my youngest is such a good solo player. Like she just can play by herself, be fine by herself. My eldest, but she just needs attention all the time and loves being in the party. So I'm like, wow, it's going to be very different. But I think they need someone to. I think quality time is important for both of them, and there's that shoulder-to-shoulder commitments. I like the idea of having a shoulder-to-shoulder appointment with my girls, so we can play like with games, or just by it's not a serious sit-down coffee having a session all the time. It's them seeing you work, them seeing you talk, and them seeing you just bring them along a lot of places so they can see you, because they're gonna become more what they see you do rather than what you tell them. I think they're going to take after your actions a lot and your behaviours. So I think that, and placing them in front of other role models that fit my values, or the values I think they need to see, which is hard work, honesty, and not necessarily fame or success. It's just like being able to give a variety of experiences to girls so they don't become sport brats. I think we're in danger of creating sport brats in our society. And what I mean by that is you can easily buy things and give things to people without them knowing that it took someone cooking that meal. There's no perspective. They've just grown up in the most affluent time in history, where everything's convenient stores, convenient smartphones, everything. It's so easy to take away the process of how these things are made and how much effort goes into them. So I do want to take the girls to countries or experiences where it's completely opposite to what they live, because I understand, like I live in northern beaches, so it's a pretty like I lived in 13 houses as a kid. I come from, like with my mum, like we had no cash, but like living in northern beaches has always been a great goal because my wife wanted to live there and all that. But they don't know that. They're there and they're just living the northern beach bubble stuff. And I'm like cautious of that. I'm like, don't be snotty nosed brat, like.
I can see you getting on that plane as soon as you can, Matt. I'll be with you. Don't you worry. Do you know what I think?
Yeah. I'll just go to the country, just drop them there, leave them all alone for like a minute and see what they do.
Make them figure it out for themselves. Do you know what I think is so interesting? Because the question started, what do you want in their future of learning and what do you want from today? And I did not once hear you say any technical skills. What I heard was I want values-based learning. I want experiences. I want opportunities for them to get curious and to critically think about their own world that they're living in, but to see that from other people's perspectives. And I just think as we're moving into this era, those human capabilities are just going to be so important, to your point, to make sure that we raise not just a successful next gen, but a really conscious next gen. So thank you, Matt. I really appreciate you sharing. Would you mind having a bit of a fun game before we let you go?
Okay. Yeah.
I have put you on the spot here because back when you and I first met, so we were both on stage for Luminosity Youth Summit, we were both contributing and volunteering too. And quite soon after, Matt came up with a pretty quirky, it was when memes were just kind of hitting off, I think. And it was a KFC song. Do you remember?
I do, yeah.
So if anybody is listening, you need to go and Google KFC Matt Purcell and see if it still comes up. I haven't recently, but I'll bet it still does. Anyway.
Yeah.
It still does. Okay, good. So I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes, actually. All right, so here's the fun game. So part of what we're doing at Posify is helping young people to really get beyond that feeling when it comes to brainstorming so that they can truly dream big and share some of their big ideas. And one of the things that we love to do is starting off with a song. So I'm going to throw 5 words, which I have not thought of. I'm going to pull them off the top of my head so that I'm also on the spot. And together we're going to see if we can come up with a super quick jingle. The only rule is that there's no right, there's no wrong, and there's no judgment. So in that way, there's kind of no fail. Does that sound okay with you?
You're making a song. Okay, here we go. Right.
You got to put your music hat. Okay, so 5 words. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
First word that comes to mind, in no particular order: popcorn, pride, humor, elephant, sun.
Okay, I need to.
Do you need a pen? Popcorn, pride, elephant, humor, sun.
Right.
I told you I didn't prepare this because I don't even know how they relate.
So popcorn, pride, elephant, sun,
Humor. Yep.
Oh my gosh. All right.
Should we change humor to fun? Is that going to be better for us? See, we can iterate. We can brainstorm on the run.
Mm-hmm. And we've got to sing a song with these 5 words in it.
Yeah, we're just going to come up with a bit of a jingle. I'm going to get you started. Are you ready? Because I've got something going on right now. I can feel it in my belly. It's a popcorn, popcorn. Go, Matt. Popcorn, popcorn, elephant, popcorn.
Yeah.
Popcorn, elephant, popcorn.
Okay.
Popcorn.
I got pride. Are we rapping?
I don't know what we're doing. We're just coming up with a jingle right now.
Oh man, I'm stuffed, Mez.
Popcorn, popcorn, elephant, popcorn, popcorn.
I'm done. I'm sorry.
He's out.
Oh
I love it. What was coming to mind as you were doing it out of curiosity?
I was like thinking, how the hell am I gonna? I'm actually the worst rapper on earth. I'm like, that was my head. I need to get started. Oh my god.
What would it be like if I didn't put like rap in your head and just said, go with those words and what comes to you next? What comes up for you then?
I crave my guitar.
Do you?
Yeah. I crave my guitar because my musician brain goes, I love, because I'll write songs with the music first and then it's easy then to do. So that's complete for my genre or what I'm used to. It's really hard to improv. I can improv with anything with musicality, but with words, I've always found that the hardest part actually.
That's so interesting.
But some people always ask, do you come up with the words first or the music first? And generally it's the music first and then the songs come. Or you make a word pool of stuff. Like you might have a word pool of elephant, fun, popcorn, blah, blah, blah. And you go away and you think about it.
And then it comes up.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. And so what happens for you if somebody gives you a tune? Like if they give you a happy birthday that you've got to put words to. So if you've already got the tune in your head.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that can be. I mean, parodies. I've done parodies for ages, so like you can, what were the words again? It was
da 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 da. Popcorn, elephant, sun, fun, pride.
Yeah, there's an elephant. Yeah. Yeah, there's an elephant in the sun. He's eating popcorn. It's fun. It's His mommy is proud and baby. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like you can, if you got something to go with, you can pull something.
Yeah. And you know what I love about that? Again, it came back to just going, let's give something a go. Oh, hang on, this isn't quite working for me. Okay, so somebody else asking the question, well, what would work for you? What's getting in your way? You know, what works well for you? Okay, well, let's play with that. And then what happens next? That's so interesting.
Yeah,
Thanks,
that's
Matt, for
really good point.
sharing.
That's really good point. That's
You know,
because
because we could have just thrown the baby out with the bathwater, right? We could have just gone, okay, that didn't work. Let's not do that. I'm sorry. I'll cut. I'll edit. We won't ever have that. But, you know, what a takeaway message. Because I think when we're brainstorming with young people as well, and we're recognizing that within them, they want to fit in with their peers. You know, they don't want to necessarily stand out and be that goofy one who gets it wrong. That's the biggest threat to them. And yet we're also wanting to ignite their creativity and their innovation, and it's within them. So if we can find where their obstacles are and give them permission to stop, of course, anybody can, but ask the question, you know, what would it take for you to take that next best step forward? You know, what are we missing here? What aren't I seeing within you that we can use as your strength, and how can I complement that? I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, that was cool. Now, I think it's good to ask someone, I guess, how would you approach this? Or how do you create this? Or have you done this before? Because I remember watching Kung Fu Panda with my girls, and the sensei was like trying to train the fat panda to do all the techniques like everyone else did, and he just didn't get it. But Kung Fu Panda, Po, he was a chef, and he loved food, and the sensei quickly found out if I put a dim sum at the top of a tree, he will do perfect splits and do perfect technique. So he had he tapped into what that Po knew and related to, so he could visualize food for different obstacles, and he would freakishly do it. But it's a similar approach. Like, it's the outcome can be achieved, but the process is different for everybody.
Yeah, I love that. And to your point with social kung fu, making sure we help our young people have a very broad range of toolkits so that they've got the punch, the uppercut, the block, the jab, the kick. Brilliant. I can't wait to see it take hold, Matt. How can people follow your journey so that they can see what you're doing all over the spectrum as you help others move towards their own success metrics?
I think for now, I just head to my personal page, because I'll give updates as things come out, because I just use my personal page as a curation of what things I'm doing everywhere else. So just type in my name and Insta. That's a good place to start. And give us a DM or say hello. It'd be really cool.
That's so cool. Thank you for joining us today, Matt. It's been so much fun hanging and playing and talking and getting all deep and divey with all the fun stuff when it comes to youth. That's all we've got time for today. Thank you again for listening to Classroom 5.0 with your host, Marianne, and of course, our guest, Matt Purcell. We'll see you later, alligators.